Today we can discuss an important psychological topic called classical conditioning theory. This is a learning theory. It is introduced by Ivan Pavlov. He is a Russian scientist. Now we can see what is the classical conditioning. This is an experiment done on dogs by Ivan Pavlov. Usually we know that when food is given to dog, the sight or smell of the food causes salivation in the dog's mouth. So what he has done is he began to ring a bell just before giving food to the dog. He had done this for days. So continuing this for days, what happened is that later the dog's brain has coupled the bell with the food. So as soon as the bell rang, the dog began to salivate. This is known as classical conditioning learning theory by Ivan Pavlov. Now you can see what are the terms used in classical conditioning. One is neutral stimulus, that is the bell. So initially here bell acts as a neutral stimulus, that means it has no response from the dog. Next is the unconditioned stimulus, that is the food, because usually the sight or smell of food causes salivation in the dog. That is a natural response. So it is unconditioned stimulus. Food is an unconditioned stimulus. The next term is unconditioned response, that is salivation. The food causes a response that is unconditioned, which is the natural response from the body of the dog, that is the salivation. So here unconditioned response is salivation. So neutral stimulus is the bell, unconditioned stimulus is the food, unconditioned response is the salivation. Now what happens is that after days, when the bell rings, the dog begins to salivate. Here the bell became the conditioned stimulus. Initially it was the neutral stimulus, but after the experiment, the bell becomes the conditioned stimulus. That means when the bell rings, salivation comes. So it is conditioned by an experiment. And salivation, which was the unconditional response, now becomes conditioned response. That means it is conditioned by the experiment. So when the bell rings, salivation comes. Initially when the food comes, salivation comes. Then later when the bell rings, salivation comes. That is, the dog's brain is coupling the bell with food. So the terms are, one is the bell, which is a neutral stimulus, which later became the conditioned stimulus, and the food, which is the unconditioned stimulus, later became the conditioned. The salivation, which is the unconditioned response, later became the conditioned response. This is known as the classical conditioning theory by Ivan Pavlov. Now you can see the application of this in practical life, that is in our day-to-day life. Usually the small children, they have fear of injections. Usually who are giving the injections? That is the health professional or a nurse or a doctor. And they will be usually wearing a white coat. So what happens is that here the white coat acts as a neutral stimulus. It has no response towards the children. But the injections are the unconditioned stimulus because it naturally produces fear in the child. So it is a natural unconditioned stimulus. And there will be an unconditioned response because of the fear of injections. So fear is the unconditioned response from the child because of injections. So what happens is that when the child goes to the doctor or the health professional continuously and he is or she is getting injections continuously, he will develop a fear towards the white coat itself. That is, conditioning is taking place. That is, the neutral stimulus, that is the white coat is initially a neutral stimulus which has no response, now become a conditioned stimulus. On seeing the white coat itself, or the doctor who is wearing the white coat itself, the child thinks that he or she is coming to give an injection. This produces a fear or anxiety in the child. So initially the white coat was the neutral stimulus, now become a conditioned stimulus. And initially the fear, which is an unconditioned response or natural response because of the injections, now become a conditioned response. That is, on seeing the white coat itself, that is a conditioned stimulus, fear comes, that is the conditioned response. So these are the terms which are used in classical conditioning, which is having an application in the practical life. Now I think the classical conditioning theory is very clear. More topics will be discussed in the upcoming videos. Till then, goodbye.